The WNBA has been growing into one of the most exciting leagues in the country, but despite its increased popularity, the league might see its first ever lockout later this year. With the WNBA Players Association opting out of its collective bargaining agreement last year, a new CBA must be negotiated between the league and its players before the 2026 season. Now, before everyone starts freaking out, let's acknowledge this type of negotiation is standard practice. Other than the UFC, nearly every major US pro sports league has a union representing its players. These unions are in charge of negotiating everything, from revenue sharing agreements, salary cap percentages, licensing contracts, merchandise royalties, and even retirement benefits with the league office. While these negotiations are standard, it can have real consequences if things don't go well. And by real consequences, I mean a lockout. If a sports league can't agree with its union on a new CBA, a lockout is the only course of action. We've seen this happen plenty of times in other US pro sports leagues. 6 times in the NFL, 4 times in the NBA, 4 times in the MLB, and 4 times in the NHL. So how realistic is a WNBA lockout in 2026? Here's what Angel Reese recently had to say about the issue on her podcast, Unapologetically Angel.
We deserve more.
Of course,
Everybody.
I agree.
Everybody.
I agree with that.
But we gotta face the consequences.
What?
Damn, we gotta get it up.
Y'all gotta
like,
deal with something. Y'all gotta do something.
But the women coming in, not this year, but next year, or because the ones coming in this year will still be on the rookie contract again.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that the year after, they gonna get more. They probably gonna be making more than us.
No, they are.
I'm hurt.
They are. Like, yeah. I've been in the meetings. They are.
I need to get in the. I need to get in the field.
You need to come to the
I
meeting.
gotta get in the meetings because I'm hearing like, yeah, they don't give us. If y'all don't give us what we want, like, we sitting out.
Following Reese's comments, her guest on the episode, fellow WNBA player DeJounte Carrington, agreed with her points.
That's a possibility, for real.
Yeah.
It was kind of a possibility on the last one, but like now I feel like just with the leverage that we have right now, and it's just a time that women's basketball is going crazy. They're really, it's gonna be a time next year.
Ooh,
so
I'm excited.
But we deserve it.
If you've been watching the WNBA over the last few years, these comments can't come as a surprise. In fact, I actually mentioned the possibility of a WNBA lockout during my conversation with Ethan Strauss a few months back.
I feel like we're quickly headed towards a scenario where there's going to be a lockout in the WNBA. And this is something I've talked about a few times because I think the players, they just have a much higher perception around their dollar value worth than the league is actually worth. And I think the players are going to have a really hard time dealing with that because they're going on the road and they're seeing these sold out arenas, but the economics of the league just don't give that opportunity to them.
I got lots of comments on this quote asking if I was joking, so let me set the record straight. I was, and still am very much, dead serious. If you asked me today, I'd tell you I believe there's a 50-50 shot the WNBA will end up in a lockout later this year. So let's break down what the situation looks like from both sides of the negotiating table. From the players' perspective, the things they're asking for make a lot of sense. By every conceivable metric, the WNBA is growing. Regular season attendance up 48% last year, from an average of 6,615 fans per game to 9,807 fans per game. It's the same story for media rights too, as the WNBA recently signed a new TV deal worth $2.2 billion over 11 years, around $200 million annually. This comes on the heels of last year's WNBA Finals, which averaged 1.57 million viewers, making it the most watched WNBA Finals in 25 years. Caitlin Clark deserves a lot of the credit for the sudden explosion of interest and growth in the WNBA. For example, Clark's regular season games last year averaged 1.2 million viewers, while the WNBA's other regular season games averaged only 394,000 viewers, a difference of 200%. However, while Caitlin Clark has already generated hundreds of millions of dollars for the WNBA, her base salary with the Indiana Fever last season was just $76,535. That's just a little over $1,900 a game. I have to imagine the league was making a little more than that just from selling ads during Caitlin Clark's games. While some players are seeing sold-out arenas and reading about the league's new multi-billion-dollar TV deal, it's no surprise they want to start making more money. This is especially true when they see other leagues share revenue roughly 50-50 with their players compared to the 90-10 revenue sharing agreement in the WNBA today. Right now, the highest paid WNBA player is Jackie Young at just over $500,000 a season. But that's not enough, according to the league's biggest stars. Here's Caitlin Clark's teammate and former #1 overall pick, Aaliyah Boston, talking salary goals on 60 Minutes last year.
I love multiple commas just because, like,
we deserve it. That's what we come in here night in, night out. We work hard. You see the viewership numbers up. You see everything up. I mean, I'm all for it because I love a comma.
I'm all for players getting compensated properly, but the problem with Boston's line of thinking is that it just doesn't match reality. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that the WNBA is growing, but I just don't think that most players and fans realize that the league's cap table makes a significant jump in player salaries nearly impossible. You might have heard someone say that the WNBA has been around for nearly 30 years, yet has never actually turned a profit. Obviously, that's not a very fun fact, but it's also not the main reason why player salaries are so low. Plenty of leagues aren't profitable in the traditional sense. For example, most MLS teams are still losing money annually, and Formula One teams were losing hundreds of millions each year before Liberty Media introduced the cost cap. The real issue for WNBA player salaries is that the league has been subsidized by the NBA for decades, and as a result, the NBA now controls a substantial portion of their revenue stream. Commissioner Adam Silver has said that the WNBA cost the NBA about $10 million a year since its inception. The NBA was willing to stomach these losses because the WNBA's existence allowed the NBA to market itself as a year-round product to TV broadcasters, since the WNBA season primarily takes place during the NBA offseason. The NBA then essentially had a call option on the growth of women's sports. In the worst case, the $10 million annual loss doesn't hurt the NBA financially, while the best case scenario was the WNBA growing into a billion-dollar league in the long term. What does this all mean for the WNBA players? Well, it impacts their equity stake in the league. Aside from the NBA's investment, the league also raised $75 million in 2022 from an investor group that included Nike and several other sports owners. So, while more money is a good thing in theory, this new money diluted the league's equity stake even further, and now less than 50% of the WNBA's annual revenue flows down to the league and its players. This is all a rough estimate at this point, but based on several reports, the WNBA's cap table probably looks something like this. WNBA owners control 42% of the league. The NBA controls a similar 42% of the league, and the remaining 16% is controlled by the 2022 investment group. This is a critical difference between the WNBA and every other major professional sports league in the US. A few carve-outs materially impact the percentages, but leagues like the NFL and NBA can split revenue roughly 50-50 with their players, because they still control a lion's share of the business. A good example of this is the WNBA's new media rights deal. While many were excited about the $2.2 billion package, a large portion of that money will end up going straight to the NBA. This deal also made it very clear that the NBA didn't feel its female counterpart was strong enough to sign its own media rights deal, because if they thought the WNBA could have gotten a better deal by separating itself from the NBA, that's exactly what they would have done. I don't want to come off as a WNBA hater by any means. I watch a decent amount of the games, and seeing something like Cleveland's recent $250 million commitment for an expansion team makes me excited about where this league is headed. Investors, they're excited too, not just about the WNBA, but women's sports in general. At this point in time, I'd even go as far to say that the WNBA will eventually be profitable and come to a point where several franchises are worth $1 billion or more, generating significant annual operating income. Having said that though, I also think WNBA players need to be more realistic about the league's current situation. It's not Caitlin Clark or A'ja Wilson's fault that the WNBA needed $10 million a year from the NBA to get to this point, but that doesn't mean the dilemma doesn't exist. Salaries will most definitely increase after the next CBA is signed, but the idea of a 50-50 revenue split is still a long ways away from happening. So, while it's important this league continues to improve its players' financial compensation, it's even more important to not stunt the growth and popularity of the entire league by starting a lockout.